Hello everybody, my name is Paul. Welcome to the Stormkeep. I'm joined today by my good buddies.
James back in action here for this week.
Oh, hey, this is Morgank. How's it going?
You just jumped into this podcast like Kramer into an apartment. It's like, oh, hey, how you doing? Good stuff. So today we are doing another episode of Lords of the Storm. So Lords of the Storm is our list building series where we discuss new concepts or refine old concepts that we talked about when putting together Stormcast Eternal lists. There's a little lore here, blurb, but basically Lords of the Storm are the head council that lead the different storm hosts into battle. They only answer to Celestant Prime and Sigmar, which I think is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Adding a bit of class to the podcast here. So today's theme is Big Dragon. So specifically, we're building lists after the December 2021 Battle Scroll, which has introduced not very many changes into the meta, but the main one I would say is that Destruction looks a lot scarier. In particular, any list formed around Kragnos looks a lot more imposing. And for this episode, we asked our community to give us some lists on Discord, like we did in the last two Lord of the Storm episodes. This time, the list had to have either Krondys or Karazai, or both. And we had over 30 lists submitted and ranked by our community, and at the end of the video, we'll go through the top 4 lists. There are some pretty interesting concepts in there. I don't want to spoil it, so I'm looking forward to talking about them.
I just wanted to say that I didn't realize that our Lords of the Storm series had the acronym of LOTS, so for the longest time I was reading that Discord channel, it was lots of big dragons.
Yeah.
All right, first list up here is the Bastian's Battle Regiment. So we've talked about this list on our Discord for a little while now. So at the core of the list is the concept that Bastion's redeploy ability is really, really strong with Longstrike Raptors in particular. One of the main weaknesses that Longstrikes have is you don't know if you can safely put them on the table at the top of turn 1 because you don't know who's going first. Right, so even if you're going first with a 1-drop battalion, if your opponent has a 1-drop battalion, it turns into a coin flip. And then you're stuck in a situation where you really want your Longstrikes on the table, not put in reserve with Scions because you want to use Thunderbolt Volley, but you don't know if you can guarantee that you're going to go first in order to actually do that. And by leaving them on the table, you're leaving them exposed to all kinds of nasty stuff. And Bastion fixes that problem, right? His ability to redeploy a unit after you find out who's going first or second is perfect for this type of strategy. What happens is you deploy very aggressively, and you can force your opponent to deploy very defensively, and then you flip the switch and then you make them go first. Or alternatively, you can play very defensively. Your opponent starts deploying more forward, and then you flip it on them again, and you turn into the aggressor by deploying your long strikes forward. It's a really powerful tactic, and I think it's the best way to use Bastion. So the core list here is Lord Relictor as the general. He's using High Priest, Translocation, Arcane Tome, the typical stuff. You've got Aventus Firestrike in here to make the whole list run buttery smooth with all the efficient command point usage you're going to get out of it. And then Bastion is in here because, well, the list is formed around his ability. So he's here chunking down monsters. He's covering a flank by himself while Aventus and the Fulminators kind of do their own thing on the other side of the board. Then you round it out with 2 squads of Liberators, some Aether Wings to provide screens and +1 hit for the Vanguard Raptors, and a typical hammer of 4 Fulminators. Very simple, straightforward list. I would say this is maybe the easiest competitive type list to play as Stormcast. The only trick comes in whether you deploy forward or backward with Bastion's ability, but having the choice is so powerful. This list is almost like point and click. You know exactly what you're going to do when you get the matchup. It just depends on how that coin flip goes in the top of round 1.
Basically, yeah. And I love the Battle Regiment being able to dictate turn order, because sometimes you just want them to come forward and hit them before hitting them with Bastion and Fulminators.
Yeah, and you could get more value by going Warlord and Hunters. In some matchups, though, it's better to just go first or force your opponent to go first. Right, one of the big problems lists I would say is still right now Deep Strike Salamanders. Right, when they drop in like 3 or 4 squads all in one turn, and they try to get the double, and then they just table you. So if you go Battle Regiment in that, you can force your opponent to go first, mitigate the damage from the Deep Strike Salamanders, and then if you get a double turn, you just win. Right, like that matchup is over if you get a double turn against Seraphon. It's pretty nuts. Similarly, against Lumineth, if you can go before they get their 5-up board off with Techless, then you can just destroy them. You can completely destroy all their key pieces and cripple them, and the game is just determined because you won a coin toss. So, I don't like the Battle Regiment in terms of game design. I wish they kind of just got rid of it. I think it just, I don't know, being guaranteed first turn is a pretty strong mechanic, and it's kind of warping the whole game. I wish it would go away overall, but as long as it's here, we might as well play with it. So like I said, the general strategy is you can deploy your Raptors really aggressively to force your opponent to play back, or you can play far back and force them to kind of come towards the middle of the board. And either way, you can flip it with Bastian. Now his ability is you can redeploy D3 units, but you never ever rely on rolling more than a 1 on that. Like, I don't even know what I would want to redeploy if I rolled a 2 or 3 on that D3 roll. It's such a weird ability.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, maybe you just trick your opponent into thinking you're deploying really aggressively, but pull 2 units back. I could see that.
It's really marginal gain after the first unit, right? Like, you build your list thinking, okay, I can redeploy this unit if needed, and then anything else after that is a complete bonus, like a really marginal gain. Like, oh, my Liberators can come on this flank instead. Like, it's really not a big deal, right? The Raptors are the key thing.
Yeah.
Now, Bastian himself he's got a weird war scroll, right? It's kind of like Andrasta, where he's all over the place, but he's more focused and better at what he does than Andrasta is. Or
yes,
at least he's really good at what he does, whereas Andrasta's kind of just okay at everything. Bastian is like, yeah, he's going to chunk monsters every turn. He's going to issue commands anywhere on the board. He's going to let you redeploy. Like, these are all really strong abilities. 300 points feels steep. I wouldn't put Bastian in any list, right? You have to specifically take advantage of his redeploy, I think, in order to justify running Bastian.
Yep.
Now,
I'd say, yeah, like it says, Bastian can cover a flank by himself against weaker hammers. You also don't want him to get singled out, so like one of the things I like with redeploy is like putting him towards a flank, making your opponent think they're going to go there, so they put some valuable unit there to counter you, and then like switching him out to like inside your castle if you have to.
Yeah, what I've noticed is that a lot of opponents really overestimate Bastian in terms of damage and survivability, and they'll put like a strong hammer across from him, which feels wrong. Like, Bastian's not that tough, and he's not that strong. So I think once people realize this, that he's not like, it's not like getting charged by Celestin Prime, you know?
Yeah, I think his max damage is 16, which, and considering it happens in like multiples of 4, it's likely to be something like 8. So he's not a huge damage dealer. He's just, and he's not meant to like take on things that are 14 wounds or above, like those kinds of units. But yeah, he's just meant to like keep fighting, stay in the fight basically against things that have multiple models.
Yeah, his ideal target is something with like a 4-up save and less than 5 wounds. That way, every hit that goes through guarantees a full heal on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's really weird, and honestly, like, I wish there was a way to have more damage or more attacks on all of our primes. I mean, I guess the Celestin Prime's the only one, but it doesn't seem like they're pointed for damage. Which is weird. Like, the ability to do max 16 damage is really weird.
They pay a lot for that 4-up board. Being effectively 16 wounds, they pay a lot of points for that, I think.
Yeah.
So very typical combos. Aside from Bastian, this is a very standard list, right? You've got your Toralon, who's going to be casting 2 spells this time because he's a Ventus and not the regular Toralon. So you can cast both Mystic Shield and Celestial Blades on your Fulminators. Normally you would just cast one or the other, depending on whether you want to be aggressive or defensive. This list you can cast both, which is great. He can still give the entire list +1 hit with Comet Trail, which is one of the reasons we run Toralons, period. And interestingly, it's worth noting that Comet Trail and the Aetherwings +1 hit bonus is actually stacked together. And since Comet Trail lasts until your next hero phase, if you buff your Raptors and then have Aetherwings in range when you get charged, you can use Unleash Hell at +1 instead of -1, which means you're unleashing
on 2s.
Yeah, unleash on 2 and 2, which is gross. Just gross.
Yeah, absolutely. Good lord.
Yep.
That's still potent with the changes to Unleash Hell, though.
It's more risky, which actually would justify the increased accuracy, right? Because it's riskier to use Unleash Hell. Like if you're within 6 inches to attack, they're within range to pile in and hit you with a lot of things, like 3-inch weapons or zombies doing a 6-inch pile in, for example. There's lots of things that can get to them. So if you are taking an Unleash Hell, right, if you're taking that risk, you want to make sure it's as accurate as possible. So stacking Comet Trail and Aetherwing seems like a pretty good idea.
Yeah, you want to make it like a regular shot or volley.
Yep, and that's exactly what it is. It's just like getting another volley, which is really good. Other regular things in here, it's got your 6 squad of long strikes using Thunderbolt Volley to double tap. Thunderborn, which is Bastion's ability to just deal damage at range. That chips away monsters every turn, and as long as we are in a monster meta, Bastion gets high value. I think if we ever transition out of that meta, if you start seeing lists that don't have monsters with 12 to 18 to 35 wounds if you're a Gargant, then Bastion just isn't as useful anymore. You have to get value out of all of his abilities to justify 300 points, I think.
I think we'll still see monsters. I think their main selling point isn't that +1 point every now and then from a battle tactic. I think their main selling point is the fact that they're getting monstrous rampages and heroic actions a lot of times.
I agree.
And I think and those aren't going away. So those are part of the core rules. So hero monsters are here to stay, boys. Like, sure, we might not see as many. Like maybe they cut down and not try to score that many points, but the utility for hero monsters is crazy. So.
Oh, totally. Yeah, monsters are going to stick around. They're not going anywhere, like you said. Speaking of which, Aventus is a monster, which is really good for battle tactics and using monstrous rampages. So a little bit of extra flavor thrown in there, which I really like. I like having at least one monster in the list. It makes the list play very smoothly in terms of scoring objectives every turn.
Mm-hmm.
And then, your typical combos, High Priest, Translocation with Raptors. It's almost impossible to avoid getting shot by long strikes when you have that combination. Fulminators do the most insane damage in the game, and with this many defensive bonuses, you can keep them alive too. Now, the downsides of this list are Fulminators are slow, and because we're running a battle regiment, we can't run an extra holy command, which means we can't run Steadfast March. So the Fulminators are moving up 10 inches, and then charging. That's it. It's a pretty slow list.
Yeah, like Fulminators in here aren't going to go hunting out for targets. They're purely there for counterattack, I feel like. In any other list, I'd either take Steadfast March or a Gur Battle Mage to help out Fulminators get a somewhat better delivery system.
Yep, for sure. And that's definitely featured later on in this video. We have a list in here that does take advantage of Steadfast March and Battle Mage with Fulminators. Now, because Bastion and Fulminators are both fairly slow, you kind of want to take a middle ground approach with this. You don't have super long threat range with your melee hammer like if you were running Storm Drakes or Grand Hammers, so you have to kind of play towards the middle of the board, using your long strikes not just as raw damage output, but really strategically, thinking about what is my opponent threatening me with that is preventing me from just fighting in the middle of the board like I want to, right? Like what long range units does my opponent have that I can take out so that he's forced and funneled to come fight my Fulminators and Bastion. Another problem with this list is that it's got a really low unit count. 5 units and 3 heroes, and that's it. You're not summoning any more throughout the game. You're not reviving any of them, so every single loss here really hurts you, not just in terms of damage output, right? Like losing Liberators, you're still going to probably win if you lose Liberators, but you have to be mindful that losing those Liberators means you have 1 less unit for tactics, you have 1 less unit for holding objectives. It hurts, right? So you can't be wasteful with this. Even though you seem very durable, you can't be wasteful. And I've thought about some possible changes, different directions you could go with this concept, right? Because the first thought is long strikes and Fulminators. Those work really well together. We've seen that. It's tested, time-tested and true. What you could do, though, if you wanted to increase your threat range, is to run Storm Drakes and give them a Lord Castellan to make them more aggressive. And to do that, you would have to cut Aventus and the Fulminators, but then that would be a much more aggressive version of this list. It gives you more threat range, less damage, because Storm Drakes don't do as much damage as Fulminators, but I don't think you're taking a huge efficiency loss. Because you have Bastion in here, you don't need both Bastion and Aventus, right? They're both effectively just command point generation, because they save you from using all-out attack and things like that. So I think you can get away with running Storm Drakes because you have Bastion in this list. You don't necessarily need a Torlon. Alternatively, you could just swap Aventus out for a standard Torlon, right? You could get an Arcane Tome on him to cast 2 spells. You could take Master of Magic trait, because you don't really need High Priest with this list because you have so many different ways to move your Raptors already. Having to reroll or getting to reroll a translocation is not the end of the world. You can miss one and probably still win.
I don't know. I like the 2 cast from Aventus. I think Mystic Shield and Celestial Blades. Yeah, it sucks that you can't take a mount trait. That I really like the Scintillating Trail or whatever, the one that's -1 to dispel for enemy units.
Yeah, that one's
I'd
good.
like that.
You can still get 2 casts on the Toralon if you take an Arcane Tome on them.
Mm-hmm.
But you would be giving up a Thundershock, which is a good buff, right? Like that's our 3rd best spell, and I like bringing it whenever I can.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's Bastion's Battle Regiment. If you're looking for an excuse to play Bastion, or if you just want to play a pretty solid all-around list, then you can run this one and have good success, I think. It's fair. It's not too specifically skewed in any direction. It's a nice all-arounder and tactically versatile, which is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
The second list is called Double Double. It's the second list being featured. This is all based off a single concept, right? So if you take a look at the list, we've got some weird stuff in here. We've got a Knight Relictor, a Knight Vexillor, and a Knight Judicator. So 3 heroes you typically don't see together in a list. But what this list is trying to do is translocate Judicators forward, use Thunderbolt Volley, then drop a Knight Vexillor, teleport the Judicators again, and then do a standard shooting attack. And while you're doing all of that, your Stormdrake Guard are rushing up to greet you in melee. So that's what this list is trying to do. And let me explain why that's useful. A typical way you play around crossbows is you take advantage of the fact that they're only 18-inch range. So if you can block out a certain amount of space, you only have to keep your key units more than 9 inches from your front line, right? Because if you have to teleport more than 9 inches away, then they can keep their dudes 9 inches from the front line, and then therefore they're more than 18 inches, and you can't shoot them after you teleport. That's how people will play around this, right? That's what makes things like hero face shooting really powerful, because you can do it before you have to do any movement type abilities. Now, crossbows do tremendous damage against even 3-up saves. Crossbows do a tremendous amount of damage right now. So in order to take the most advantage of them, you want to be able to shoot something that actually matters, right? And we've talked about the Stormdrake plus Judicator crossbow combo before. You know, Judicators are short range, high damage. Stormdrakes are long threat range, lower damage, so they balance each other out really well. But one of the problems I've always run into is that the crossbows just shoot the screen, and then the drakes still don't, they just don't have the extra little range they need to get in on something that matters. And I think with the Knight Vexillor tech in here, you can get around that. I think this is exactly what this concept needed. So I would deploy this, even though it's a battle regiment, I would deploy this in a typical castle setup, because sometimes you want to force your opponent to go first. The benefit of that is then you can potentially get a double turn and then just win, because 2 turns of drakes and crossbows attacking is going to wipe out most lists in the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I wonder, is the Knight Relictor here just for the memes?
No, it's because I needed 5 points. It's exactly 2,000 points.
Oh, it's exactly 5 points?
Yes.
Okay, never mind. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the Knight Judicator is here to, for a couple of reasons, to stop other armies from deep striking you, right? Because if you have to take damage from 15 Judicators and 4 Stormdrakes and a Judicator shooting at you, you're not going to want to summon anywhere around that. So that's really good zone denial. And he's also there to add that extra little bit of shooting that you need. Sometimes you swing a little bit low, or you're fighting against a 2+ save and you need a red 3 shot. And his Gaze of Sigmar is really good at punishing castle setups, which I think when you play against something like this, your incentive is to castle or alpha strike them really, really hard. So the Knight Judicator fills a lot of roles in this list. So I'm exactly 2,000 points. Knight Relictor, you did it, baby. You got featured on the Stormkeep. In a real list. This is a real list. This is not, not a joke list.
It's not a... It seems like it, but it's actually like pretty potent.
Yeah, I think this is it's got really good gimmicks. I don't think it has enough gimmicks to be as versatile as you want to go, 5-0 in a typical GT. But I think the gimmick is really solid. being able to get the perfect positioning twice in the first turn is pretty much all you need to cripple your opponent.
Yeah, I agree.
Another really fun combo here is that I don't know how often it comes up, but the Vexillor does allow the Drakes to reroll charges in all phases. That includes their hero phase charge, which is a pretty neat combination. You can sometimes get that extra little reach that you need, or I don't know. People are playing Storm Drakes now. Tell us in the comments how many times you failed a hero phase charge with your Storm Drakes. It hurts because it's a once per game ability, right? So it just hurts when you fail it, and being able to reroll it is pretty nice. Now, the Vexillor isn't going to be on the table most of the time. He's going to come in from Scions, but I think there will be still situations where this will help out. And maybe I'm just hurting from failed charges here.
Maybe. Yeah, I really like him with the Prosecutors, like Vexillor combined with Prosecutors for Unleash. To absorb Unleash Hell. I like that combo too.
Yeah, you can also do some interesting things. In our Discord, we have a channel called Math Hammer, and I recently put in a little table there detailing what a 9-inch charge looks like success rate if you want to reroll 1 dice or 2 dice. Because with Tempest Lords, you can reroll one of the dice, and with a Vexillor, you can reroll both, but you can't use both abilities, right? I think that's how everybody's going to rule this. So there are certain situations where it's more appropriate to reroll 1 dice or reroll both dice. So if you want a quick look at the Math Hammer chart there, yeah, it's useful. Prosecutors are just good, I think. They're not good combat stats, but for their purpose, they're very well suited, right? Having a 12-inch move lets them easily get out to objectives, and dropping in from Scions, they get a 3d6 rerolling 1 charge. Really, really good at absorbing Unleash Hell and letting your Storm Drakes get in. Like, there's no way you're getting hit by Unleash Hell with this list.
Yeah.
Now, the downsides here, like with Bastion's Battle Regiment, you don't have a lot of stuff, right? You have 2 units of Prosecutors, you have the dogs from the Night Judicator, but other than that, you're kind of hurting for units. You don't have a lot of stuff that can go out and do things. You're very focused on your goal. So if that tactic of double teleporting and shooting, if you don't think that's going to win you the game, you have to pivot and come up with an alternate strategy. Because if you go all in and then you're stranded, not going to be in a good spot. Another problem with this list is that it doesn't have a Toralon, which sounds strange, but it means that you have to use all-out attack on the Judicators with crossbows, and you want to use all-out attack on the Night Judicator, and you can't do both in the same phase, right? So it's a little less efficient than I would prefer. Ideally, with Stormcast, you want everything hitting and wounding on 2s as much as possible. Another inefficient point with this list is that I really like running Storm Drakes with the full suite of buffs. I like giving them a Lord Castellan for +1 save. I like giving them Mystic Shield and Celestial Blades. I like running sometimes a Night Draconith in there as well to make them double tap on breath. This is like a discount version of the Storm Drakes. After seeing them at their full performance, this is not that, right? So the crossbows here are doing the heavy lifting. The Drakes are here for their speed and their durability. And in terms of possible changes, you could swap in the Night Draconith, right? You could swap out the unit of Prosecutors and the Night Judicator and then bring in a Night Draconith. But then that means the Night Draconith has to be the general, which means you lose the command trait to reroll prayers. And the whole point of this list is to jump, shoot. And if you're not re-rolling, you just have a 5 and 6 chance of getting your gimmick off. I don't think that's good enough. I think you want it as accurate as possible. So, yeah, that's unfortunate. One thing you could do is you could swap out the Drakes because they're expensive, right? 680 points for 4 of those guys. You could bring in a Toralon and some 3 or 4 Chariots, and that could end up working for you instead. Chariots are pretty quick. They're actually more durable than Drakes, and they actually do more damage than Drakes, funny enough. So I think that is an interesting way to go with this list too.
Yeah, Chariots. Yeah, honestly, I'd like to see a fast list that sort of runs interference with Chariots before you pile in. Yeah, that'd be nice to see.
Okay, Gronk, take us away with your updated Annihiliana Grande list.
Okay, so my previous list was employing a Warlord and a Hunters of the Heartland battalion, going for 3 groups of 3 Grand Hammer Annihilators in Hunters of the Heartland. This one, I recently tried to go more for Battle Regiment. What I found was not being able to dictate turn order, being vulnerable to a double turn can sometimes be really problematic. The other two things that I discovered was facing monstrous rampages isn't a huge issue because typically you can shoot charge and then the impact drop mortal wounds shooting from the raptors normally takes care of any monster you'd want to fight, so you don't have to do like the perfect damage on 2s and 2s. So that's not as prevalent other than maybe the Gargant matchup. And then obviously I discovered that sometimes 6 Raptors and 3 Annihilators don't always kill a Gargant, they almost kill it. About, I would say, like 6 to 9 wounds remaining, something dumb like that. And Prosecutors didn't seem necessary after the new Unleash Hell change because, they couldn't just unleash with the whole unit just because one model was a 9 or something. So this tries to go for the battle regimen and, like you mentioned, adds the Knight Judicator for just that extra bit of shooting to take something down. I tested it over like at an RTT this past weekend. I really, really like the Knight Judicator. What I really love about this list is it has like just that extra bit of shooting with the Judicators and the Knight Judicator, but the Gryph Hounds are great in a mirror match, in a Stormcast mirror match where they're hoping to drop, like a 4 Stormdrake Guard unit 12 inches away from your line to start breathing fire on you. They drop down and you get to shoot them with the Knight Judicator, the Judicators, and the Vanguard Raptors, which absolutely annihilates them. And so it makes them waste a turn having to deep strike them outside your castle, outside of breath range. And then the rest of the list is pretty straightforward. Lord Imperator to help out the Annihilators, Relictor with High Priest, Mirror Shield, and Translocation.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you about a couple picks here. The Mirror Shield. If you're going Battle Regiment, do you think you need the Mirror Shield still?
I think so because I thought about going Arcane Tome. The reason I went Mirror Shield is because at the end of the day, if I'm facing another Battle Regiment, it's ultimately a coin toss. I don't want them to shoot my Lord Relictor off turn 1 if that happens.
I think I'd rather shoot your long strike crossbows, right? Like in every situation, I think I'd rather shoot the long strikes.
Well, it depends, right? So it's like if I know for a fact that my opponent has a battle regiment and they're going to deploy first, meaning they are going to decide turn order, I have to put my long strikes in the sky if they have any potent shooting whatsoever.
Yeah.
So that leaves the Relictor as the only juicy targets because what I have on the ground is usually the Knight Judicator and the 2 summoned Gryph Hounds. That gives me enough slots for both the Annihilators and the Imperator. And then normally I have Judicators on the ground, and the Aether Wing, so that gives me the slot for Vanguard Raptors.
Mm-hmm. That is worth mentioning. The Judicator creating an extra unit of Gryph Hounds does count as having 2 units on the table for the purpose of Scions. So then, instead of just being able to put 1 unit in reserve, you can put 2, which is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nice.
If you go to the next slide, I think I mentioned it on there. Yeah, so Gryph Hounds giving Warning Cry is pretty good. Annihilators and Imperator usually in the sky because you don't want the Imperator getting shot off. So I usually when I deep strike him in like a corner somewhere where they can't get to him as easily. And then it's just your typical castle screen. The only problem is like the screening isn't very durable at all. It's not good. Like it's just 2 Gryph Hound units, possibly like a Judicator unit, and then an Aether Wing unit. So your screening will crumble, but I discovered that it wasn't that much different than having a Liberator and like say a Prosecutor unit.
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed pretty fine. I mean, like you said, it's like a sniper castle, and you're just dropping grenades on your opponents.
I
the other thing.
Go ahead. Sorry. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. The other thing I discovered was with a 3-3, it's more tactically flexible, and I like that combo. But I really wanted to fit in a battle regiment, so I didn't do the 3-3. The other thing I discovered was usually whatever game I'm playing, once I drop the second unit of Annihilators, the game's like already decided in my favor, if that makes sense. Like
if you're in a position where you can drop them, then you're doing really well.
Yeah. So if I'm getting to my turn 3 and having to drop the 30 of Annihilators, it almost never hinges on that third drop. No. It's almost always the first 2 drops that decide the tone of the game and whether my Raptors are still alive or not.
Yeah, so. and playing 240 points down in terms of bodies and in terms of damage is really rough for Stormcast. We're a very elite army already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. So let me ask you about the Judicators with Skybolt bows, because we don't see those a lot in lists unless you're running a squad of 15, because usually when you run a squad of only 5, a lot of people just prefer running the crossbows because they do a lot more damage. So what's your thinking on the Skybolt? Is it because they're going to be sitting back and acting as a screen?
Yes. The idea is they're performing a dual purpose. They're acting as a bit of a screen, similar to what Liberators were doing in my last list, but also peppering the enemy from 24 inches away. I like the crossbow pick. I guess it's fine if you want to like delete, a screen with it. But given the amount of shooting in this list, I think having skybolt bows work fine for that purpose too. And I like the extra bit of mortal wound shooting, combined with the Night Judicator. It's another unit. If they do deep strike in front of my castle when I have Gryph hounds, hey, I get to shoot you with my Judicator unit. So
I'm just trying to think of what, because you could go like more screens. You could go Liberators and Aetherwings, but then that breaks your battle regiment, so you can't do that, right?
Yeah. It's very tight keeping the battle regiment. Like there's sometimes like if I wanted to split it, if I had to like that's why I think if you go to possible changes that I would make for this list. So one of the weaknesses is I have no anti-magic at all. So if I end up going second against, like, say, a techless 5-up ward, well, I'm basically screwed. So one of my first ideas was actually, like you said, switch out bow judicators for annihilators with shields in case I ever wanted a third annihilator drop, but I don't think I will. I could also see switching out bow judicators for crossbow judicators to be more aggressive. And then obviously the other idea is add in a Knight Incanter, more Aetherwings instead of the Judicators, and go more drops in a Warlord and a Hunters of the Heartland.
I think Hunters with Grand Hammers is so key right now, especially with Kragnos being such a threat. Being able to just drop down, delete something, not worry about Roar, so you can get off your +1 hit. I think that's really important right now.
I could see that. I actually have another RTT this Sunday. I'm going to try this exact battle regiment out. The last tournament I was in was disallowing those, so I'll see how those matchups go. And I have time till LVO, so we'll see what I take there.
How do you think the extra shooting would help you? Because you've got notes here against Kairos. I find just like 1 or 2 extra units of shooting is what you need to deal with Legion of the First Prince. 6 Longstrike Raptors can get the job done, and on average they do get the job done, but it's too risky because of Dark Master, and sometimes you roll low. And I hate rolling low because you're so accurate, and the bell curve distribution for Stormcast is so steady, but sometimes you roll low, and it drives me crazy when that happens. So I like having a secondary shooting unit.
Basically, my thoughts exactly. Against Legion of the First Prince, I almost always deploy my Raptors in the sky because I don't want them to get Dark Master turn 1. But I can, I guess there's no risk to doing that, considering they don't really have any long-range targets outside of an Umbral Spell Portal stuff.
An interesting thing about Dark Master is you'll know if you can use Thunderbolt Volley because it has to activate at the start of the hero phase, right?
Yeah.
So
So it's not something they'll get to. Yeah, I know. The other thing, the other reason is, exactly. Like when I face one of my good friends who plays Disciples of Tzeentch, or another one who plays the Gargant or Cruel Boy, sometimes like they just have lucky rolls. They'll just make their 5-ups. Or again, in the case of Tzeentch, they'll use like Destiny dice and make X many saves and then roll out the rest, and they'll be fine. So having Raptors, like the Raptors will bring something down to like 4 or 5 wounds left, and having that extra Night Judicator to go, okay, I'm going to shoot you with Ren 3 shots now. For that 6 damage is really, really good.
Yeah, Ren 3 is really important now. It feels like.
Yeah. It makes a huge difference.
It's making me, especially with how tight our battle regiments are, it's making me revalue ballistas a little bit. I might start including a ballista or 2 in my battle regiments.
Yeah.
Well, just one.
If that's
really.
A bit swingy. Yeah. Like the reason I really prefer the Night Judicator is because of the free Gryph hounds. Like,
great.
It's helping out against Stormcast mirrors is actually really good, because if you deploy properly in a castle formation, it even means another list that's running, I don't know, bow judicators. If they deep strike like within 12 of you, and they might be forced to, depending on what they want to shoot, you can shoot them, and it's so great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we will. We'll talk all about Gryph hounds when we get to one of the next lists that I'm going to be talking about. Gryph hounds are phenomenal. Well, I hope this goes well for you. Let us know how you do running the battle regiment version of it, because I am curious to see how we develop this, because the Longstrike Grand Hammer combo seems really good, and I feel like we're just on the cusp of pushing it from 4-1 to 5-0. Like, reliably, right? Because that first event you went to, you made all of your 7-inch charges. That doesn't count as a trial run.
I mean, I have never failed, not with the reroll, ever.
Oh,
like,
man.
I'm sorry, like, My dice are just hot. I don't know what to tell you. I used these Stormcast dice from when the game first came out, and they released like a bunch of Stormcast dice. By the way,
Blessed. You're blessed.
full
That's all it is.
disclosure, they've been blessed by Sigmar. They got the twin tail comet on them. Sorry, the hammer and the 2 bolts or whatever. Love it.
You know, not like James's first game with Stormcast, and he had to throw away his dice.
My first game, it was just a game where I rolled Snake Eyes twice on a 7-inch charge.
Oh, jeez, yeah. Never use rounded dice. Always square dice.
Oh, they were square dice. They
boy.
just didn't operate.
Yeah, throw them away. Paul was right. Throw them away. Get new ones.
Okay, so the next list we're talking about, and this segues very nicely from what we were just discussing with the Knight Judicator. This list is called the Great Hunt. It's a Hammers of Sigmar Scions list, and it features 5 Knight Judicators, a Taurlon to give them all +1 hit, minimum amounts of battle line, and a melee hammer of 4 Fulminators. That's it. That's the list. Just a bunch of Knight Judicators and a Taurlon. And we saw a list very similar to this. It was a Celestial Warbringers list. It had a bunch of Knight Judicators right at the start of the new Stormcast Battle Tome. And we initially dismissed it as something that would catch an opponent off guard and not tend to do very well. And I still stand by that statement. I think that list was lacking consistency. It went too all in on the shooting, and it didn't have a proper melee hammer or a Taurlon, and I think these things rounded out really nicely to the point where I can actually see this going 5-0 at tournaments regularly. Like, this is really hard to play against. I read a story the other day. Somebody was talking about how they were playing Nurgle against a list with 5 Knight Judicators, and they tried deploying a Puscoil Blightlord squad, 2 squads of that with a Lord of Afflictions, and they did it in the Warning Cry range. And I'm sure Nurgle players out there are like, oh yeah, I can survive the Warning Cry. It's, a couple shots, no big deal. But I had to go back and reread to make sure it works this way, and it does. Warning Cry triggers from every single Gryph unit that's in range.
Yes.
So if you deploy a reserve unit in range of 4 different units of Gryph, it triggers each one of their Warning Cries, and each one of their Warning Cries picks 3 units to shoot. So in this poor, unfortunate scenario, he took 24 shots from the Judicators against each of his 3 units that tried to deploy through Deep Strike.
Yep.
So
every instance of Deep Strike and every instance of a Gryph. It's crazy.
So his Lord of Affliction's gone, and I believe 7 of the 8 Blight Lords were just destroyed. Before they even got to the shooting phase, he had lost like thousands of points. Unbelievable. I really don't think he's going to make that mistake again. You do not deploy within 12 inches of dogs. It's that simple.
Yep. It's such a good anti-Deep Strike tool.
Yeah. So how this list usually plays, it's not that dissimilar from a lot of other typical castles that you would run, right? You've got your melee counterattack hammer, except instead of running 6 long strikes in a single squad and being super vulnerable to focus fire, even light amounts of focus fire, you've got these 5 heroes running around doing their own thing, shooting from different angles, putting out, I would say, precision damage where you need it. So you don't have Thunderbolt Volley like you would if you had a whole bunch of long strikes, which is bad for the turn 1 damage. But you're actually doing more damage on average every turn with these 5 Knight Judicators than you would with 6 long strikes, which makes sense because they cost like way more, right? 6 long strikes is 480.
Like 1,000 points.
Yeah, that's so half your list is those 5 heroes.
Yeah.
But because they come with all these dogs, you have very favorable matchups, right? Like this list murders Tzeentch. It murders Legion of the First Prince. It murders Kragnos. It just kills everything. And it's so hard to play against it because a lot of the way you would play against typical Stormcast shooting is you would say, oh, there's their shooting unit. Okay, I'm going to kill it. Now I don't have to worry about it anymore. But you have to do that 5 times with this list. It's really hard to do that 5 times.
Yeah, it is. And this, what I really like? This is like such a good anti-castle list. If someone deploys in a castle and says, oh, okay, you go. Oh my God. Just unload Sigmar's Gaze and it's like 5 4-ups and D3 mortal wounds per 4-up.
Yep, this murders Seraphon. If they try their typical strategy right now, which is deploying a whole bunch of heroes inside their little fortress there, you just drop 5 Gaze of Sigmar on it. And on average, it'll be taking like 5 mortal wounds per hero inside.
Priests. It'll be killing all the skink heroes for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so you want to draw the opponents in with your Judicators, and then you want to counterattack with your Fulminators. One thing you could do with this list, instead of taking Call for Aid, I took it because I felt like the Liberators are an interesting tactical choice. Being able to, have them, throw them into a combat somewhere, and because you have so many heroes all around the board, potentially, if you just want to Scions one into play somewhere, throw your Liberators away, and then summon a new unit of Liberators effectively where your other hero is. You just reinforce a different part of it. I think that has some interesting tactical play, but you could run Steadfast March instead to give your Fulminators more threat range.
Yeah, I could see that.
The Toralon in this list, I think, is like the secret sauce that makes it all work. The +1 hit, giving every single Judicator, on 2s and 2s, I think that's really, really good. It's so good, in fact, that I'm thinking about trying to find a way to bring in a Relictor to give a reroll 1 here with Divine Light against a key target, but I think I'd rather just have more Judicators.
I think that's a bit greedy. Unless because the range of that is 18, and unless you want another something to teleport him, I think just better to have an Adjudicator.
Yeah. Can you imagine if we could make one of them a priest? That would be so great.
Rosary of Faith, man. I keep writing to GW to include that as an artifact next time.
Yeah. So the Fulminators, because you can't go 1-drop with 6 heroes, it's not possible to do a Battle Regiment 1-drop. So you inherently go Warlord and Hunters. And having Liberators and Fulminators...
Oh, you mean double command entourage?
Yeah, sorry. I went double command entourage and then Hunters. That's right. Because I don't care about the command points. I'm not going to use them, so I'm just getting the extra...
Yeah, double artifact is way better. Yeah, in this instance.
Yeah, absolutely. In this case, I've chosen Mirror Shield on the Toralon, because if they see the only thing worth shooting, like if you look at this list, the only thing you'll want to shoot is the Toralon. It looks obvious that you should shoot the Toralon, so I'm going to give it a Mirror Shield right away. And then you give it Master of Magic, Scintillating Trail, Celestial Blade, so you can buff up your Fulminators. You can reliably give them Mystic Shield, or you can reliably give them Celestial Blades, I think. And then you take a Arcane Tome with Lightning Blast, so that one Knight Judicator sits as far back as possible and just keeps pinging away. And the other one takes a Luckstone, because there's nothing really worthwhile to take otherwise.
Yeah, our offensive artifacts are all doo-doo. And Luckstone makes the most sense here.
Yeah, sometimes you just want to guarantee that you wound on a 2+, right? It's that one extra hit that you need, or sometimes, he gets a 12-inch charge or something. You can find value from it. And it's a situation where I would prefer to not even have to take it, but it's better than a command point once per game. That's the trade-off here. Now, cons. I'm talking a lot about how much I like this list, strategically and in terms of just aesthetics and all that. I really like this list, but there are some big cons, right? 5 wounds for 200 points, effectively a Knight Judicator, right? Like, it comes with dogs, but the Judicator themselves, they don't take a lot of damage, right? They will die to light shooting damage that comes up their way, and that's almost as fragile as Longstrike Raptors. You need to protect these guys. You can't throw them away. You can't tank damage with them. And unlike a lot of typical shooting hammers that we use, Knight Judicators can't use the double tap, and that means they have to play like a 3-round game instead of a 2-round game like Stormcast are playing right now. So you just have to play a little bit more long-term. And there's no way to get this to be a 1-drop, right? You just can't do it. So it's unfortunate that you're always giving up... effectively, you just have to assume you're always giving up priority to your opponent, but probably fine. 30-inch shooting, you're probably fine to give up priority, especially with this many screens, and the warning cries just prevent you from getting alpha struck by any kind of deployment or summoning or anything like that. It really is beautiful how strong warning cry is. And another big problem here is you don't have a Relictor for translocation. And that doesn't seem like that big of a deal because you're not trying to use Thunderbolt Volley, but translocation is just phenomenal all the time. There's no... Like, anytime you can put a Relictor in a list, that it feels like that list gets better, right? So I'm a little cautious to start playing without it because I love how much tactical flexibility you have with it in terms of scoring objectives, battle tactics, all kinds of stuff. And that's a big downside. But, I don't know, maybe not. If your opponent sees a Stormcast list without a Relictor, maybe they won't know how to play against it. One thing you could do in terms of possible changes, you could drop a Judicator and drop 2 Fulminators, and then pick up your standard 6 Longstrikes with Thunderbolt Volley. Would you have to find room for a Relictor, though? I don't know. It starts getting more and more expensive. It starts deviating away from the concept. So I'm going to go with this version of the list, and I'm going to be giving this one some serious playtesting, and we'll go from there. I'll let you guys know how it goes. All right, James, tell us about your need for speed.
Speaking of lists that don't have a relictor in them. So yeah, we're just going with everything that's as fast as possible. I decided to include Krondys just because I wanted to see what I can build around him for this one. For the as my general, and then I included 4x1 Stormdrake Guard as battle line. Stormstrike Chariots ×2 for pinning down enemy units. Battle Mage to support the Stormdrake Guard in getting aid or making those charges. And then just lives to create some potential screen / break up combat if there's 2 different engagements going on.
I do want to point out here, you listed this as Scions of the Storm. Is it supposed to be Stormkeep?
No, it's Scions.
Okay. In that case, the Battle Mage can't learn a spell, right? Only Coalition units can learn spells. Allies can't.
So that if I put Levitate in there, it's just because I was going off the format there then.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure.
I think War Scroll Builder lets you take one of the universals.
Yeah, that's not correct.
Doesn't sound right, but yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, that's what happened. Is I was just working off War Scroll Builder, and I just insert that spell there. So yeah, then we just disregard the Levitate that's on the slide there.
A lot of people don't realize that bringing Krondys or Karazai as your general makes Stormdrake Guard battle line. Because I think everybody's in their heads that if you make a unique character your general, you don't get a command trait, and then that's where the thinking stops. Like, there's no reason to ever skip the command trait, right? But our command traits suck. So if you think of the command trait as you get 4 Stormdrake Guard as your battle line, that's pretty good.
Yeah. What else we got going on? Holy Command, Steadfast March. At the time, I thought Chronomatic Cogs would be a cool idea, but honestly, every time I put Chronomatic Cogs because I think it's cool, I barely see the utility in it. The idea was just to get some extra movement on the charge, as well as potentially giving Krondys an extra cast or something like that.
Yeah, an extra cast could be good. Let's say you don't need the range from, let's say you don't need Wild Form from the Battle Mage. You could drop the cogs, and now Krondys is casting 3 spells, right? That's an extra Mystic Shield, basically, for him, and he's casting at +3, so...
Yep.
It's not bad. It's 45 points. What else are you going to spend it on in this army?
Yeah. So, moving on to the next slide, we'll talk about how to use this list. So yeah, like I was saying, realistically, you don't want to deploy the Liberators in the reserve. You don't have Relictors, so there's no way of moving them up. You bring them down as you need them, whether to be as screens and breaking up engagements or potential engagements, or just sitting on objectives. Chariots are pinning down your enemy units, so you want to deploy all your units aggressively on the table, so that way you can close the gap quickly. Battle Mage casts Wild Form on the Stormdrakes. Krondys is backing up the Stormdrakes, so he's moving with them. So use that buff of Celestial Blades on them and any Mystic Shield as well to just make them a little bit more hardy.
Interesting.
I like that both the wizards are casting with a bonus, because a lot of times Stormcast are casting at +0, and it's really frustrating. Yeah. So it's nice to have a list where everything has a bonus to cast.
Yep.
Yeah, particularly the Battle Mage pick, because his spell goes off on a 4 currently. That's not even wholly within, it's just within 12, so buffing up those Stormdrake isn't going to be a problem, especially from the back line.
I also like the Wild Form interaction with the Stormdrake charge mechanic in the hero phase. Getting that extra +2, sometimes +3 from cogs, that's pretty nice. I like that.
Yeah. Is this a Tempest Lord list?
Yeah, it is a Tempest Lord list.
Okay, yeah, it is. Oh, cool. So I get to reroll and +2. Good lord.
Potentially +3. Rerolling 1. That's a very accurate charge.
Yeah. So again, the gimmick behind this one is really just go fast with your units.
I like it. I like the inclusion of chariots. I feel like they're underrepresented.
Well, how this all came about was I have Krondys and 2 chariots sitting behind him on my bookshelf right now. I'm just like, we're going to build a list around that.
There you go. That's a concept. That's all you need.
Yep. So yeah, pros, really mobile units and just high mobility. We can cover the board pretty easily with this one. You can prevent dog piles from happening with your liberators if need be. It's a pretty hardy list for the low model count you have. But some big cons are we're susceptible to shooting armies with this list. We have no counter shooting other than the breath weapon on the dragons. And if
That
there's
is true.
any
Yeah.
flying units that happen, or any flying units that the enemy has, can just run over our, fly over our screens there.
Are you really worried if they fly over your screen though? Like, what are you screening exactly? There's nothing for your enemy to charge against. You're all pushing up into them.
Yeah, but again, it's more so if you want to control like 2 engagements or something like that.
Mm-hmm. But with your bases being so big, like chariots, drakes, Krondys, they're all on huge bases. Just that amount of zone denial, it's going to be really hard for opponents to just fly over you.
Yeah,
because you have to finish a move more than 3 inches away.
Yeah, exactly. Possible changes. I left this one blank just so that way we can have a bit of an open discussion. Same with my other 2 lists. So what do we see here that we want to change?
Maybe running smaller squads of Stormdrake might be better. That way, like, because you're going to be
Really?
double.
You think so?
I think so. Just because this kind of list wants to pin your enemy, right? To me, this looks like a pinning list. There's nothing in here that's like crazy high damage. Like it doesn't have a shooting hammer, so it can't tear down screens, and it doesn't have like fulminators or anything like that. So this is like a medium damage list, and that to me starts to seem like a pinning list, especially because the chariots can't quite keep up with the Stormdrakes. They're almost there, right? Like they're close, but they're not there because the Stormdrakes have their double move. Chariots only have a 12-inch move. Yeah. So I get the impression that this is going to pin your opponent and try to grind them down, right? You pin them first with the Stormdrake, and then you bring in the chariots as a secondary charge and Krondys on the second turn. That's what it seems like what you're trying to do. Because if you just sit in the middle, you're done because you don't have any shooting.
So on that note, that actually frees up a battle line slot as well, so you can remove a squad of liberators and replace it with something else if you were inclined to.
Yep. And since you're Tempest Lords, instead of Liberators, you could run Prosecutors. They're faster, they can keep up, and they have that reroll. Out of Scions, they would have a 3d6 rerolling 1, which is just more bodies. You can absorb Unleash Hell and things like that. I don't know what I'd spend the extra 115 points on if we cut Liberators, though. It's a really tight list.
Yeah.
Is there any way to get like a Wizard in here? Like another Battle Mage?
Maybe get Claws Protection, perhaps, on because it's another one of those really good spells to have. Just put a -1 to hit on your Stormdrake card.
I was going to say there's no artifact being used here, so you could potentially get an Arcane Tome on somebody. Azeros.
Get a Night Heralder, 105. Yeah.
Okay, so
put an Arcane Tome on that bad boy.
If we cut the Liberators and we cut the other Liberators down to Prosecutors, we have 120 points. That's a Knight Azeros right there with an Arcane Tome.
Yeah. With an Arcane Tome, just keeping up with your Stormdrake Guard for a Mystic Shield or Celestial. Mystic Shield actually.
And that's Tempest Lords too, so he can do the Scion's 9-inch reroll 1, right?
Yeah. I mean, typically you'd want to run him because he can't. If he deep strikes with a 9, then he can't use his lamp.
He has to make the charge, right?
Isn't the lamp? Oh, the lamp's used at the end of charge phase.
It's at the end of charge phase, and it's
okay. So he can charge into it. Okay. I got you.
Yeah, I like the sounds of that, actually.
I think that just fits better. Thematically, you get more wings, you get more speed. The Liberators kind of are just going to sit back, and you're going to drop them on an objective, and that's all they're doing for you, right? You don't even care about Lookout Sir here. The Battle Mage, everything's just going to run out of his range. You don't even care. You're done. He's gone after turn 1. Which is kind of a bummer. I wish there was some way to get like a Relictor in here to like translocate him up to support later. But there's nothing else you want to translocate, right? It feels like a waste.
Yeah,
agree.
See, I really like what Krondys is doing in this list because he's like a toolbox, right? The rest of your list is very focused, and Krondys gives you a bunch of different options because he's got his typical. I think what most people are going to cast is the -1 save spell, like the Rend increasing spell. And that's really good, especially with like all these Rend 1 attacks that you have in the list. That does a lot of damage. Oh no, sorry, you're using lances. So yeah, you get Rend 3 lances, which is great. Rend 3 lances are fantastic.
Ren 3 is gold standard, baby.
But Krondys offers a lot
see
of...
what I did there? Stormcast gold standard.
There's a lot of utility with Krondys too, right? Being able to take enemy long strikes and give them -1 attack is really big, because that affects their characteristic in the hero phase and in the shooting phase, right? So if you're playing against an enemy castle that has a double tap unit on the board that has 2 attacks, it's now halved in efficiency. Really good. He's also a really good tank, right? Like, both him and Karazai have this ability. A lot of people don't see this when they see the War Scroll initially, but every melee attack against them is reduced by 1. So if you're fighting up against a unit with 2 or 3 attacks per model, that's a huge damage reduction, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're playing up against, what's going to be relevant soon, like Ideneth Eels or Hearthguard Berserkers, right? Who typically have 2 or 3 attacks on across multiple profiles sometimes, that's tremendous damage reduction. Krondys is going to be able to tank units and units of those guys every turn, which is really, really good. So he gives you that. Like, if you went Karazai in this list instead, I don't think it would work as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think in this case, I think Krondys' casting is actually pretty relevant. It's not a list built around supporting heroes and Karazai for the damage, so Krondys is very much part of the support formation here.
Yeah, he almost takes all the support onto himself, right? And he does it in a very unique way, right? It's not like the typical Relictor wizard package that we get. He is like a big monster support hero, which we don't typically see in this game. I'm a little worried that he doesn't have a ward and he's just going to get shot down, but you know, if you have multiple units of Storm Drakes who can all rush forward and charge up and pin the enemy, then that probably won't happen.
Maybe he's not the priority target, yeah.
Yep.
And if you have prosecutors, right, you just tie them down. I like it. Nice list, James.
Thank you.
Next up, I wanted to talk about Hallowstrike. I'm sure people are sick of talking about it. I promise I won't put it in the next video. But I just wanted to talk about where we've ended up with this list. If you're unfamiliar with Hallowstrike, it's a Gardas Steel Soul castle with a Toralon, usually some kind of melee hammer and some kind of shooting hammer. So typically it's fulminators and long strikes. Those work really well together because the long strikes force the enemy to come to you and then you countercharge with the fulminators. And then Gardas is giving everything a 5-up board, and then you just have a lot of really efficient stuff like Lord Relictor, Toralon, and Cantor to stop spells. You get to run Hunters of the Heartland Battalion, so everything's immune to rampages, which is really, really big right now. Yeah, so this is the general form of the list here. And I wanted to note one of the innovations we've come up with is running a Vanguard Battalion with Gardas. And what that allows to do, because you're using Warlord Hunters, you might as well go for as many drops as possible. You don't need a battle regiment anywhere. And by taking the Vanguard Battalion, you get a free run 6 with either the Liberators or with Gardas once per game, which is pretty nice. Sometimes it's that extra 6 inches you need to get Gardas to have his aura cover another unit, right? Because you deployed him on the table instead of in Scions, and you want to run him up without using translocation. And that's just a nice little bit of efficiency. We've tinkered with the enhancements here. What we've settled on so far is running the Mirror Shield on the Toralon, because a lot of people, as soon as they see a Toralon without a Mirror Shield, they declare bring it down, and then they shoot it. That's just how it goes every time. The Lord Relictor, it's pretty easy to hide him behind a building or just behind the Toralon. You just get him out of sight. Lumineth can get around that, but frankly, if Lumineth want to shoot your Relictor, they're going to put themselves in range of your Raptors, right? So it's not the end of the world if you lose the Relictor. Because you're not doing a battle regiment, it's not the end of the world. You have to learn to already play around that possibility. In terms of spells, we're still taking Chain Lightning on the Toralon and Thundershock on the Arcane Tome Relictor. Thundershock is better than I thought. Being able to translocate the Relictor at any point and then cast Thundershock and potentially tag a whole army is a really strong combo. Inconsistent. It's very inconsistent because you have to make the translocation, which has a chance to fail. Then you have to cast the spell without a reroll or anything, which has a chance to fail. And then you have to roll a 3-up for each unit. But sometimes that's the little bit of extra utility that you need. So it works out pretty well. Incantor is there to stop spells, to give you more time to kill a Kairos or a Nagash or anything like that. Yeah, Hallowstrike is still very good, and this is the current form of it.
I like it.
And then
They're
there's
all reliable.
And then there's two variants I want to talk about. The first variant here doesn't look like a big change. You swap out the Torlon in order to get a Battle Mage and a Lord Castellant, which gives you more heroes, which can be useful depending on which battle plans you're playing. It gives the Fulminators more defense because you can stack Mystic Shield and the Castellant's +1 save. But most importantly, it gives you a Battle Mage for Wild Form, and instead of taking an extra artifact, you take an extra Holy Command, which is Steadfast March. And what this allows you to do is to cast Wild Form on your Fulminators, which gives them +2 run and +2 charge, and then you're allowed to run and charge your Fulminators with the Steadfast March command. So what I found in my playtesting is that Fulminators are just too slow, right? If you're playing against a list that is faster than you, they can deploy out of your movement range and then wait for you to come in the middle and then attack you. Or if you're playing against a castle, Fulminators don't have the range to get to the enemy castle and charge turn 1 reliably. However, if you tech in a Battle Mage with Steadfast March, you have that capability. So this improves a lot of matchups that Hallowstrike was suffering against, or not suffering, but it doesn't.
It was a weak point. It was a weak point in the list.
Yeah, it does remove the Torlon, which I really don't like because I like having everything have +1 hit all the time. It makes things really efficient. I like having a big monster for rampages and for battle tactics. But if you are trying to be more aggressive with your Fulminators for tactical reasons, not just because you want to run across the table and hit stuff, but because there's specific times where you want to be aggressive, then taking Steadfast March and Battle Mage makes sense. And that's this variant. And another variant I wanted to talk about is a version of the list that goes for a Battle Regiment and Stormdrake Guard instead. So what this cuts is it cuts the Knight and Cantor, and it cuts the Torlon, and it cuts the Fulminators. In exchange, you get a Draconith and 4 Stormdrake Guard. So this is almost a different list at this point, right? It feels like a different list, but you kind of play in the same way, right? You still don't want to take your charges with the Stormdrake Guard. You still want to use them as a counterattack unit, but if you think of them like flying Fulminators with double the move, like you use them in the same way, they just have more utility, right? In exchange for damage. The Battle Regiment helps a lot of matchups, and I'm finding it seems to be a useful tech option. Now, the downside of this, what you might really want to do here is not give the Arcane Tome to the Draconith and give him a Mirror Shield instead, because he gets shot down like every time I play him. Every time you think about playing him, somebody's already sniping him down with Lumineth Sentinels. So definitely consider using a Mirror Shield instead of going for the additional value, and then swap out the mount trait and all that stuff. And I know James, you and I have been a little bored playing Hallowstrike because it's very it's very methodical. It's like, oh, you've deployed in this way. Okay, I'm going to deploy in this way, and this is how the matchup's going to go. So I don't know. Maybe try this one out. It might give you a little bit more spice.
Yeah, for sure. It's not that it's boring because it's methodical. It's just boring because 9 times out of 10, like, you're deploying the same way.
Yeah, what you're doing, like, your opponent doesn't really affect you because it's like 9 times out of 10. The optimal way to play is to be defensive with it, right? To deploy further back and let your opponent come to you. And how they come to you doesn't really matter because you're going to deploy against it more or less the same way.
Yeah, it's more so I've seen this song and dance before. Okay, let's go.
Yeah. Now, some of the things I like about this variant is your hero phase damage is tremendous, right? The double tap from long strikes and double tap from Stormdrake can do a ton of damage. It has a lot of monsters for tactics and for rampages. So you can, for example, stomp on something and roar at it in the same turn. You can roar with your Draconith and then still use Titanic Duel with your Stormdrakes. You can charge into a Seraphon Temple and destroy it with the Draconith and then still be able to all-out attack with your Stormdrakes that are charging in. I really like having multiple monsters. It's definitely one of the upsides of this version. Okay, we're going to run us through. Well, I'll just let you say the name.
So basically, off of the Great Hunt, it's a bit of a meme list, but surprisingly has teeth. Again, the idea is to basically have just overwhelming amounts of gun, and this list goes for that. Just really aggressive with the Battle Regiment to decide turn order. The Lord Arcanum because just such a good model for CP efficiency. Relictor for translocation, either for Raptors or any of the Judicator blocks. Thunderbolt Volley was self-explanatory, and just a whole bunch of Judicators and Raptors supported by a single unit of Night Judicator with Gryph Hounds for the Warning Cry, which is really insane in this list, the amount of damage you can dish out. And the turn 1 alphas with this list are actually really, really good. It's basically, against an unprepared opponent, it'll just wreck most of their army. If you go to the next page, actually. So it's a pretty standard castle formation. A whole bunch of your Gryphs and your Aether Wings, and maybe like a unit of Bow Judicators as a screen, and then everything else is shooting from underneath it. Thunderbolt Wally, self-explanatory, Battle Regiment to be aggressive. The only problem with this list is there's no melee hammers, so it can't compete on objectives in very aggressive ways. You have to be able to wipe stuff out. But in between the Mortal Wound shooting and the Night Judicator, I don't think that'll be a problem. Plus, it has a monster for monster battle tactics. So I just found this list really funny, and I was experimenting with this, just theoretically, but turns out there's actually a list in Poland that is very similar, that basically won. It faced Gargants, I want to say 2 or 3 Soulblight Gravelord matchups, and another matchup I can't remember. It might have been Daughters of Cain, and it won. So
Shout out to
I don't
Poland.
know. Maybe this shout out to whoever's in Poland making crazy lists like this. Apparently, they don't play with terrain. It's like a flat field or something, because some of those other Daughters of Cain lists were like 30 bow snakes. I'm like, how's this list winning anything?
Oh my god.
So,
How do you
it was like,
think of the footprint of 30 bow snakes?
yeah. It was like 2 groups of 10 bow snakes, and then 2 groups of 5 bow snakes, and then Marathi, obviously, and then a bunch of Kinnerai. I was like, Jesus, this is crazy. But yeah, apparently terrain is for suckers, apparently. And yeah, so this list can really, really mess up a lot of opponents.
I like your possible changes there.
Yeah, no changes. I mean, you could make like cosmetic changes, like maybe switch out the 10 block of Skybolt bows for crossbows, just to get more shots, and then switch out the 5-man to be purely Skybolt bows. But other than that, no, it's purely to make people angry.
You've kind of just avoided the problem of having to take Hunters of the Heartland by just not using melee units, which is an interesting tech choice, let's say. Kind of like when in 2nd edition everybody was fighting first and fighting twice, and Stormcast were like, no, I'm going to shoot you.
Yeah.
This conversation's over.
So I'm like, I'm like, monstrous rampages? What is that? Don't tell me about it.
What do you think you would cut for a Knight Incantor? Like, do you really think you need anti-magic here? Because Techless can still autocast the teleport or the 5-up horde, and you can't stop it.
Yeah, the coin flip really bothers me, but I'm thinking in between that much Mortal Wound shooting and just shooting in general, you should just be able to overwhelm, or my hope is to overload their 5-up if I end up going second in that scenario, or hope for like a lucky unbind.
You'd have to cut, probably 5 Judicators, and then you lose your battle regiment too, unless you want to cut one of these heroes. And I
lose my battle line because I have no other battle line. So it's a very tight list in that scenario. I could probably cut 5 Judicators with Skybolt bows from that first 10 block for a Knight Incantor, and maybe cut the Lord Relictor. I know it's not ideal, but
what do you could go? Oh, yeah, you're translocating long strikes. You need it.
Yeah, but if I'm just dropping long strikes into position, and just making sure they stay there and stay relatively alive with a bunch of Judicators surrounding them, also shooting, maybe I don't care that much about translocation. So yeah, Knight Incantor will probably take the place of Lord Relictor, and that'd give me maybe enough points for a Triumph too, for winning on 2s on Judicators, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's a question. You listed the Arcanum as your general, but you didn't give him a command trait. What would you probably take here? Master Magic?
Oh yeah, that Master Magic, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That'd be the auto take.
Now you took Celestial Instincts. That's an interesting pick.
Yeah, so the reason I was initially thinking of Scintillating Trail, but I'm like, well, there's no spell that I really, really want to cast, There's no spell that I really care about being Unbind. Celestial Blades is nice, Mystic Shield is nice.
Why did you even take Celestial Blades here? Sorry to interrupt, but what do you... like?
Yeah, just put it on himself in case I need to go out and fight something. I couldn't think of...
Lightning Blast, Thundershock... Yeah, Celestial Blades feels like a waste.
Yeah, I that's one of the flex slots. I would say, switch it out to whatever your flavor is. I think Thundershock is a perfectly good, acceptable replacement for that. And that's honest. The reason I chose Celestial Instincts is because I didn't really care about my opponents just unbinding my spells. But if I do get into combat with them, I don't know, a -1 to hit seemed really nice. Sorry, being able to get out of combat. Is that the one that's
retreat and run?
Yeah. Retreat and charge. Yeah.
Retreat and shoot or retreat and charge. Now the problem with that is you can't activate combat trail if you retreat.
Yep.
Which really sucks. But you're stuck in combat, so you're not going to activate it either way. Yeah.
Yeah. So the flex slots are what enhancements you take on the Lord Arcanum, but other than that, it's pretty tight.
Cool. Well, looking forward to hearing how this one goes. If you're actually going to play it, or if it's
I might try this out on RTT, not this month. I have a few next month too, so I'll give it a shot and be like, all right, let's see how this gets.
Next up, James, run us through your list here. Draconith Hammers.
Yeah, another list where we got Krondys playing a support piece. Battle line slots are being filled by a squad of 4 Fulminators and 2 squads of Tempesters. Lord Relictor there to give Blessed Weapons buff to the Fulminators. And Lord Arcanum on Torlon. My usual insight with this guy is to give him the Arcane Tome just to get Mystic Shield off, but given that Krondys has multiple casts, I would quite honestly think that you're better off giving him Mirror Shield in this case.
Well, you've given it to the Relictor, so you'd have to give him something instead.
Oh yeah, shoot, I didn't even notice that I had Mirror Shield there.
Also, I'm not sure this fits properly into a Warlord battalion, because you got 2 commanders and only 1 sub-commander.
This is true. So yeah, we want to be able to get that extra enhancement.
Yeah. You could do Battle Regiment and then just have an extra Torlon hanging out.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd probably be a better swap for that.
Cool.
This is what happens when you do your assignments last minute, folks.
Okay, so it looks like your plan here is Krondys and then a bunch of Dracoths, and then you're supporting it with a Relictor and a Torlon. That's a solid concept, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's really just a battering ram at the end of the day. You have the Tempesters that are clear any potential screens in the way of the Fulminators. And then you're steadfast marching the Fulminators up as far as you can go. While it's buffed up with Blessed Weapons, and then Krondys does Thunder Shock into whatever enemy to give the Fulminators a bit of a defensive advantage there.
Nice. And I see you've also included the cogs here just to get a charge bonus, or do you think an extra cast?
Either or, realistically. It's same situation in the last one where I thought cogs would be a neat thing to have, but sort of it's something to be play tested more or less.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the idea here is, like I said, just case by case. If you're going up an Hallowstrike list, then you want to deploy back as far as possible. If not, you can decide to go a bit more aggressive and have your Dracoths lead the charge. Torlon is following, as well as Krondys. Basically, everybody is moving in one sort of unit. Dump all your buffs into your Fulminators, so Celestial Blaze from the Torlon, Mystic Shield from the Torlon, or Krondys, and then Krondys is dumping a Thunder Shock into the enemy as well as his signature spell.
Mm-hmm.
Blessed Weapons as well as going into the Fulminators. The pros, we have the capability of shooting out screens in this list.
I noticed you went Scion, so I'm assuming you would drop your Tempesters into play to shoot down the screens and then rush in with the Fulminators?
Yeah, you could do that for sure. We have this is actually surprisingly like a decent amount of casting in this list too. You have potential for 5 casts with cogs. And you're unlikely to get tied down in this list, quite frankly. Fulminators are just going to ram through whatever they're going through in this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Fulminators attacking on one side, and then Krondys pushing up the other flank, kind of taking a more defensive role, while the Fulminators are more offensive. Classic hammer and anvil kind of tactic.
Yep, exactly. Cons, not much defense, and this is a list that wants to move together, and as such, it could easily get exposed to threats, whether it be... it's another one that's relatively weak to shooting. You can probably get wiped out in turn 1 if you get alpha struck, and your Relictor is going to fall behind, so beyond that first turn, you're not going to get much utility out of him.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it might be worthwhile to go with a prayer enhancement to give him both blessed weapons and translocate, so then he can just teleport himself forward as needed?
Yeah, I would say.
Instead of maybe taking a Mirror Shield on him, because are you really worried about him getting shot down?
No, especially if he's that far back.
Yeah. He's not a priority here at all. If your opponent is killing a Relictor, that's good for you. They're wasting resources.
You're winning. Yeah. Yeah, normally, like, I would say Mirror Shield is really an auto-take on the Relictor when you really have to translocate Raptors at some point. Where they're vulnerable. But in this instance, yeah, I would just say Arcane Tome, perhaps.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, you already have the Arcane Tome on the Telron.
Yeah, I think you'd swap the Tome to the Relictor and then take the Prayer Enhancement to give him his own translocate, so he can just teleport stuff as needed.
Yeah, exactly. That makes sense.
Cool. Looks like a fun, very elite 12 models. Is that has to be the new record, right? We haven't had a list with that few models before.
No, I think
even your all dragon list, that was still like 12, I think.
That was 12. Yeah, we haven't had an elite list in a while.
Just to note, 12 models, 84 wounds. What was the last lit? Was that with the Parry the Sea Casual? 82 wounds?
82 wounds with 34 models. To be fair, though, that didn't count the extra wounds you get from the Gryph hounds.
True.
I think I did in that one.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, I counted the wounds in. Yeah.
Oh, what a strange state of affairs we're in. Where these are like, just looking at the stats, it's so bizarre with Stormcast. Like the model count, the wound count, it's so weird.
All over the place.
Yeah. Cool, man. It's an interesting list. What would you think about running, because you've got a lot of casting here, what would you think about running Karazai instead of Krondys? Because it's the same points, it's an easy swap. What would you think?
It would be a good substitute, quite frankly, but I ran with Karazai and a Celestial Warbringers or Celestial Vindicators list coming up in the podcast.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we'll save it for that.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, another Hammer's of Sigmar list. I called this one Rend 3 Crossbows because the goal is to get Rend 3 Crossbows because crossbows don't do enough damage. We need to pump them up even higher. So this is using a Battle Regiment Battalion to get a 1-drop to hopefully try to go first. Because if you don't go first, this list is not going to do much. It's just like your previous one there. It's just going to get hit hard, and that's the end of it. But the core of the list is Krondys, casting Geminids and his -1 save spell. You've got a Lord Relictor to translocate up a bunch of Judicators who are then going to double tap. And you have an allied Skink Starseer who is going to cast his Control Fate to give an enemy -1 to save. So between Krondys -1 save and the Skink Starseer -1 save and the Geminids that disable all-out defense, you're effectively adding 3 rend to all attacks against an enemy unit. So I rounded that out with some Tempestors and 15 Crossbow Judicators. And that's it. That's the whole list. There's nothing else. So if you know you're going first, you can put the Tempestors in Scions, right? If you're a battle regiment and you go first, you can put the Tempestors in Silence because they don't quite have the mobility to keep up with everything else you're doing. They can't be very aggressive. We talked about Dracoth's needing Steadfast March to get those turn 1 charges. Otherwise, if you know you're not going first, you can put your Tempestors as your screens. Unfortunately, that's what this list has to do. It has to use your expensive Dracoth units as just basic screens for your Judicators. Then you translocate your Judicators up, drop your Tempestors in play in front of them, and blow something up after you've debuffed it with Rend 3. And now, perfect scenario for this list is you force your opponent to go first, they move into the middle of the board, and then you are in range with all your spells and you can unload on them. It's definitely one of the big downsides of this list is that it has very specific threat ranges, and if your opponent just deploys out of them, then that's it. You can't really do anything about that. So Krondys' Blizzard, the Flash Freezing Blizzard, it's hard to say when you have a cold, combined with the Starseer's Control Fate and the Geminids is how you get your high volume, low rend attacks to scale incredibly high and make it look like you're hitting with something with a 6-up save instead of a 3-up, which is really, really fun. And Krondys is casting with a +3. It makes casting Geminids very reliable. Normally, Stormcast are not very reliable at casting endless spells, so he kind of offsets that. And when he's not doing that, he still has a lot of utility, right? Like we talked earlier, His Ancient Master of War ability that reduces all melee attacks by 1, like the melee profile, that's really strong. Your Meteor Hail can turn a Rend 2 unit into a Rend 1 unit, and it's a huge difference in this game right now between Rend 1 and Rend 2. When you're playing Stormcast, like stuff with Rend 1 just bounces off you. So if you're in a Stormcast mirror match, you just debuff the enemy Fulminators, don't even care how much damage they can do because they're all Rend 1 now.
Wow, yeah, that's a lot of a lot of spell casting, and honestly, you don't see Geminids taken a lot, but it actually does quite a bit of work.
Oh yeah, disables all out defense. It disables not rally. It disables redeploy.
Redeploy.
It disables unleash hell. Yep. There's a lot of stuff that it shuts down, and as they keep adding more stuff, it's going to get better and better, I think.
Even charge rerolls, which is relevant on their turn.
Yeah. If you hit them during that turn, yep, it can mess up their charges because you can still redeploy freely, and then they can't reroll the charge.
Mm-hmm.
The Skink Starseer also can sometimes generate you an extra command point. I thought about a variant of this list where I would bring in a couple squads of Razor Dawns, but one of the issues I ran into is Krondys is so expensive, Judicators is so expensive, you don't have a lot of points left over for battle line and stuff like that. And I guess you could bring in cut the Tempesters, bring in 2 Razor Dawns and Liberators instead, something like that. You'd have to completely cut out all the Dracoths though, so it's an option.
Razor Dawns, are those the ones with Skink Handlers too? I can't.
Yes, they have the Skink Handlers. They have the 18-inch shooting, 2d6 shots per model, which 4d6 in the squad of 2, and they also have that really cool ability to shoot at the end of the charge phase, which is really, really fun because it works even when you're charging on your own phase. And the Starseer also gives a Seraphon unit 3d6 charge. So these 8-inch guys move up, shoot, charge in, shoot after charging, and then fight like Dracoths do. Razor Dawns are really, really good. Very undervalued for only 95 points per squad. Downsides. If you're relying on offensive spells, Kragnos is just going to laugh at you. It's really that's how you're trying to punch through Kragnos is by debuffing him with spells. He's just going to ignore all the spells and you're not going to do anything against him.
Yep. And be like, ha ha ha.
Yep. There's a bunch of units in this list that want +1 hit, and you can't fit a Torlon in here. Just not enough points, which is really unfortunate. So your Tempesters will often be shooting with +0 hit, which is rough.
I was thinking about it. Maybe that's why the Tempest spell from Krondys goes off on a 9. It's just to have a chance at avoiding Kragnos.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, that does help with that. Does he roll 2 or 3 dice? He rolls 3, right?
He rolls 3, but it can happen. It's low, but it can.
Yeah. I'm not going to rely on it.
Mm-hmm.
This list only has 6 units. 3 of them are heroes. You only have 6 units.
Yeah.
It's so limited tactically. You can't move around in anything except a single ball, and you just hope to kill your entire enemy army, and that's your strategy. There's no screens. Krondys isn't particularly vulnerable or particularly durable, right? Without a ward from Gardas, without any kind of protection spells on him, he's a very expensive support piece. Thankfully, he's not the general, so if your opponents shoot him down, then they don't get Slay the Warlord, which is good for us, I suppose. One thing you could do is to swap out the Geminids for Aether Wings. It would give you more bodies, and you'd be more likely to get a Triumph, so you can blow stuff up harder with your crossbows, if you need more damage on the crossbows. So that's it. The concept of this list was to push Rend as high as possible using Krondys. I wanted to get at least one Krondys list in this discussion from us. I didn't know James was bringing 2. Okay, and James, another one of yours here. We've got Angry Dragons. Run us through this.
We've got Celestial Vindicators going on. Again, another one that's low on units, but we got Karazai the Scarred as our general to bring in Stormdrake Guard as battle line. Lord Relictor with Divine Light. And then 2 squads of Judicators, or Boltstorm Judicators. Reason I separated them was just to get the battle line requirement going on in this one. So we've got Thunderbolt Volley as our holy command, just to get some extra potency out of Judicators. If we go over to the next slide, we'll talk over strategy with this one. So one squad adjudicators will go into reserve. Your larger squad with the relictor. Dragons are going to be deployed aggressively, or far back as needed, depending on what your matchup is. And you're focusing on trying to make the charges. Your charges with your Stormdrake. Once your Stormdrake make it in a range, you're going to drop down the Judicators and the Relictor, and hopefully on that next turn you want to get Divine Light off, just to get some extra, just to get those rerolls on attacks in any combats that you're in. So yeah, with the Stormdrakes charging in, they get the Celestial Vindicators special ability where on 6s they hits explode. And then you're re-rolling ones with Divine Light, ideally.
Mm-hmm.
Cons in this list are there's no screens other than the Judicators. Pretty easy to pick apart this list, and it's a dice game. You, if you fail your charges because you overreach, then you're sitting in dead water there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you note here that it's hard to get the Relictor in range to use Divine Light. Divine Light's a really strong buff. It's and it's very reliable, and it can't be dispelled. It's great. But 18-inch range feels so awkward with that prayer, because most of the time you won't be able to cast it turn 1, especially if you're deploying from Scions. It almost makes me wonder if you should just drop the Relictor for something else in this list.
Yeah.
Because I think buffing up your Stormdrakes before they go in would probably be more valuable. Maybe run like an Incantor with an Arcane Tome, right? And that way you can get
Castellan with an Arcane Tome.
Well, I'm thinking double buff with the Incantor, right? Because you get Mystic Shield and Blades off. Or, a Battle Mage to cast Wild Form on Karazai, and then Steadfast March with him. Because if you're dropping your Judicators into play, you're not going to get that Thunderbolt Volley off, I think. I think they're going to die before you get a chance.
Yeah, more than likely. Unless you rely on that double turn, but...
Yeah. Now, I don't want to take this list concept too far away. Once you start adding more stuff for Karazai, it pretty much just turns into a Saint Karazai list, which we talked about in our previous video. And that's Karazai Murder Ball. Which is not what you're trying to do here. It's interesting.
Yeah, I like it. It's an interesting, very compact list, easy to use.
It's a concept list for sure, I think.
What would you think about running 2x2 Stormdrakes instead, and then you won't have to fill your battle line slots with Judicators? You could put them into a single unit?
Yeah.
Or are you thinking the...
Yeah, considering you're not running a Knight Draconis, yeah, I think 2 into 2 might be better, and then you could use the 180 points towards a hero.
Yeah, and you're not necessarily worried about buff stacking a squad of four anyway, so...
Yeah. Well, if you run a Incantor with Arcane Tome to double buff them, then I would run a squad of 4, but in this form, I think I'd rather run them 2x2. I'd even run the Judicators 3x5. As many units as possible. It makes your buffs less efficient, but it gives you more tactical flexibility. Just more coverage around the board.
Yeah.
God, I am looking forward to Karazai hitting a block of zombies. That's going to be the best day ever.
Or 20 Graveguard.
20 anything. 20 any model.
Yeah, the new Fire Slayers are coming out, so we'll see what happens with them.
Yep. The rumors I've heard are very interesting. I'm very excited about it. Okay, so let's get into the community submitted lists. So the top 4 lists like I said, we had about 30. There were some pretty wacky concepts in there. I'm glad I don't have to talk about some of them. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
You guys come up with some really weird stuff. But I like the list that were submitted here. I believe I actually went through and I voted for each one of these, so maybe the reason they won is because of that. So totally just skewing it, ruining my own show. Great.
Is Martin going 3-0 in our Lots series right now?
Oh, he's a veteran. He's a Lords of the Storm veteran. He's just in every single video. So we'll start off with his list here, Dragonstar Arena. So this is Hammers of Sigmar, Scions. You can see model count is pretty low, 11. He's got Krondys, a Battle Mage, 2 units of Stormdrake Guard, and 4 Fulminators. So he is using Krondys as this like support piece that's going to try to do everything, pretty much everything that all the other support pieces would do, while also still being a big monster, right? He's running split Stormdrake Guard with lances, so he's trying to have more tactical flexibility, because you could have run 2x2 Fulminators instead, right? And then a bigger squad of Stormdrake Guard. So he's obviously trying to buff up the Fulminators, do as much damage as possible, because look at that Relictor. Blessed Weapons and Celestial Blades, and that's just tremendous damage from those Fulminators. Whatever they hit is going to die.
Yeah, this looks like the refined version of the list that we were just talking about earlier.
Yeah, pretty much. The Battle Mage from Gryph, it gives those Fulminators the extra reach they need with Steadfast March. The Lord Relictor makes them do like 1,000,000 damage. You don't really need Translocation for anything in this list. And
actually, Translocation is fine, because if you're gonna buff something up with a +2 to charge, you're effectively turning it into the Lord Imperative.
It gives you that tactical flexibility. I think Steadfast March is going to give you more range in most matchups, but it's nice to have. I suppose my issue is that you could go Battle Regiment instead, and you could drop Translocation.
Interesting. And keep Blessed Weapons, even though you're not in range turn 1?
Oh, you would be in
range.
range.
No, Blessed Weapons is the exploding... Sorry, I don't know what I'm thinking. Sorry, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so I think I would just keep Blessed Weapons for that turn 1, do as much damage as possible in the first turn. So what's missing from this list is obviously shooting, right? There's no shooting hammer whatsoever. You're relying entirely on your Drake Breath and your Fulminator Breath, and Krondys hopefully to do a little bit of damage from range, or at least
18-inch breath, basically. Yeah.
Now the problem is that the Ren spell, without shooting, like all the shooting in this list is mortal wounds, so the Ren spell does nothing for you there. You're just going through melee combat predominantly. And that...
Well, Ren 3 Fulminator always sounds good, right?
Yeah, it's a lot better than Ren 2.
Yeah.
I like this. What do you guys think about this?
I like it. It's neat, compact, easy to use, has some potent combos, either through Deep Strike or via Steadfast March. I also like seeing a list that doesn't overly rely on Thunderbolt Volley, which seems to really be our best holy command. So, yeah, it's a nice list.
It doesn't have anything disposable, right? That's a big problem with this, is that if you, especially with 6 drops, you're probably not going to go first. If you're not going to get to choose. So this gets hit by an Alpha Strike. Yeah, I don't know how this survives.
Yeah. Making the choice of this thing is going to die because my opponent is going first. Like, if this was going up against my Annihiliana Grande 1-drop, like, what do you keep in the sky? That's my question. Like, what do you sacrifice? Because everything is important. Everything, is valuable and is a damage dealer, mostly. So.
Yeah, I don't know how this list gets... Like, you can get to an enemy castle, but if you're not tearing down the screen, you're not hitting the stuff in the back that actually matters. It's just going to shoot you the next turn.
Yep.
So it's weak to castle setups, like really refined castle setups, and it's also weak to really refined Alpha Strike setups. So it's definitely it's got some weaknesses there for sure. And I don't know how I would change that. Maybe I'd go for Battle Regiment, and I would maybe swap out 2 of the Stormdrake Guard for some Liberators, I guess.
Maybe, or I honestly, I don't know. Maybe switch out. I don't know.
Maybe Liberators and Judicators or something. Some kind of shooting and more.
Liberators and a Night Judicator, maybe.
That would work. Would break a Battle Regiment.
Get you some extra bodies. Yeah, it'd break a Battle Regiment, so you'd have to do something else.
Yeah, I think going all in on the Drakes and Fulminators here. Another problem these 2 units have in particular, like Fulminators and Drakes, you're going to run out of space to hit stuff in melee. Right, that's a big problem that our melee hammers have, especially if you have 3 different units that all want +1 hit from all-out attack. Now, I do like having multiple monsters, because you can Stomp and Roar and Titanic Duel. But you're going to run out of space for melee. 4 Fulminators already are a really wide profile, and I find I have trouble sometimes just getting them in combat. So it's going to have to be a situation where you have like Drakes on the left, Drakes on the right, Fulminators in the middle, everything moves up, right? And you can't really deviate too much from that. If you have to collapse on one side or one particular flank, the Fulminators probably don't have the mobility to do that, and then the Drakes might be out of range as well. Yeah.
Yep.
But I do like this list. This does seem like a fun list to play. Maybe not the most competitive, though. I'm seeing the more I talk about it, the more I see how I would play against it with my typical list, and I'm thinking like, oh yeah, I definitely just find the weaknesses and pick them apart. But it is nice to see a list that doesn't use 6 launch strikes. It's really nice to see that. All right, we're going to run us through KrondysStrike by phandec. I hope I pronounced that right. Sorry if I got it wrong, buddy.
So it looks like another Krondys support list, but with a lot more support pieces and featuring our boy, the Knight Relictor.
He's making a lot of lists.
Like you said last time, this one seems to be going for a Krondys support, but instead of using melee hammers, he's primarily using a shooting hammer, the Vanguard Raptors. It's got Liberators as screens in Hunters of the Heartland. And interestingly enough, a Lord Arcanum for CP efficiency makes sense. Interestingly enough, Guard is Steel Soul. I guess they were really worried about not being able to protect Krondys, and so a 5-up ward there is always good. Krondys' combat profile isn't actually bad. So my guess is the plan here is to have that Guardus castle, but instead of Stormdrake Guard or Fulminators as the hammer, Krondys is the hammer unit that counterattacks.
Yep.
Yeah, the Knight Relictor with the standard Translocation, Arcane Tome, Celestial Blades. My guess is those. I don't know what the Celestial Blades would go on in this instance.
Have to be Krondys, right?
Doesn't he wound on 2s?
With his jaw, he wounds on a 1, but his other attacks are on 3s.
Okay, so probably for Krondys then, sure. High Pace Translocation, which honestly, a 3-up rollable Translocation is just as fine as a 2-up Translocate, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I'm just going to put it on the record here. A 3-up reroll is a 32 out of 36, whereas a 2-up reroll is a 35 out of 36. So almost the same. You're going to, you have a 4 times the failure rate as you would with a 2-up, but it's not a big failure rate. So quadruple failure rate is not a big deal. Sometimes Knight Relictor shaves those 5 points that you need, which is that just hurts me to think about the Knight Relictor actually making it into lists because he's 5 points cheaper.
God, if he was 20 points less, I'd be so glad. I'd probably be taking him over the Lord Relictor a fair number of times.
I definitely would, yeah.
Yeah, so I like this list. It wants to do basically what your Hallowstrike does, using Krondys as a big hammer. It's got the protection from Guardus. So this list is fairly durable. Like turning Krondys into an effectively, I want to say 27 wound monster with the 5-up ward is very, very good. And making your Raptors Ren 3, 12 shots at Ren 3. I want to fire that, and especially since you can cast that in the hero phase. Put the Raptors to Ren 3 and fire that Ren 3 volley twice. So 24 shots at Ren 3, excellent combo. Can probably kill most things in the game.
It even makes Liberators scary. Like Ren 2 Liberators, their Grand Hammers being Ren 2 2 damage. That's not bad.
Even their normal weapons have Ren now.
So. Yep. So that's 3s and 4s Ren 2 on basic battle.
No, I like this list. I would say it's maybe not as efficient as running 4 Fulminators, but then it's not also reliant on the movement of 4 Fulminators. Like Krondys is a fairly fast-moving monster, comes with hero actions, comes with monster actions. What I'm really struggling to understand, I should say, but I wonder if the Lord Arcanum on Toleron is a take in this list.
I think it is, and here's why.
Is it?
Here's why.
Okay.
CP efficiency. This list really wants to use all-out attack with Krondys and all-out attack with the Longstrike Raptors. If you had some Aether Wings in here, I'd say maybe you don't need it. But
that's so. Yeah, my take here was, what if we took out the Lord Arcanum on Toleron and made it an Aether Wing and Knight Judicator combo?
You could do that, but here's another piece. Saintly Assault is really good on both Krondys and the Toleron because they're multi-profile.
The +1 attack?
Yes.
Sure.
Yep. Also, the Toleron is a monster who can do supporting roars, right? You get charged in, you absorb it with your Liberators. Toleron sits right behind it and does a roar or something, right? He's a nice secondary monster to divert enemy attention, because if you put all your eggs in the Krondys basket, he's just going to die. But if your opponent has to split their attention across 2 monsters, one of them is more likely to survive.
Interesting. Yeah, I could see that. The only change I would make is possibly switching out the Arcanum on Toleron for Castellant and 2 Aetherwing units, or a Knight Judicator and a Aetherwing unit.
Yeah,
that's the only other combination I would try. And yeah, if you have the 5 points, upgrade the Knight Relictor to a Lord Relictor because, hey, Healing Storm is a good spell on Krondys because of how the heroic recovery has changed. The hero action has changed. But no, I like this list.
I definitely think the Knight Judicator would be a good pick here. Gives you more bodies. I like that. And then Aether Wings as well. That almost is exactly the same points as the Toyline, and it would give you the 5 points you need for a Lord Relictor instead, just so you get that extra +1. And Healing Prayer, which would be useful here.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not worried about breaking a battle regiment or anything. So that would be a solid swap. But this is good. This is a good variant of Hallowstrike. I like it. I need more reasons to run Gardas, obviously.
Yes. Best hero in the game. Oh, in our book, anyway.
Yeah. James, what do you think? Would you try this one out? Because you just finished painting Krondys, right?
Yeah, I did, and it was a blast. Any excuse to run Krondys, I'll run it. So,
what do you guys think about the specific enhancements they picked here? Mirror Shield, Lightning Blast on the Torlon, in particular.
Lightning Blast. I'm not the biggest fan of that one, quite frankly.
Would you rather run like a Chain Lightning instead? Because it could potentially do more mortal wounds?
Yeah, I would say.
I like that the Lightning Blast is just infinite range, right? Something's taking D3 mortal wounds, which is nice. Like, if you really want to play far back, which maybe that's what this list is trying to do, it's interesting picks. Either way, cool list, phandec. Congratulations on making it on the show.
Yeah, I like this list. I actually might give it a go. I'm actually painting up Karazai right now, but I might give that a go later.
I just say it's Krondys. Who's going to call you on it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Morgana, you want to take this one,
Oh
man?
my.
Are you familiar with Tempest Eye?
I am familiar with Tempest Eye.
Okay.
Actually, hold on. Let me but so I don't make any mistakes, let me pull up my handy dandy copy of the Cities of Sigmar battle tome.
That's not your typical Stormhost icon there, guys.
No, this is
this
is our first cities list.
Is that the Illuminati? What is that? Okay,
the
so Cities of Sigmar. Cities of Sigmar list. So, but they're part of the Stormkeep, so they get an honorary mention. The Dreadlord on Black Dragon, not a unit you see very often, which has been given the Swift as the Wind arcane trait, which means the general can run and charge in the same turn and always fights at the start of the combat phase. So
really
not
strong.
a bad
really strong.
Yeah, pretty strong. Yeah, and it's got the Arcane Tome for a flaming weapon, which I believe would. Let me actually pull up Dreadlord on Black Dragon. Okay, so it's got Razor Sharp Claws, which are 6 attacks at 4s and 3s -1. So I'm guessing that's going to 3 damage instead of 2 damage. It's not the best unit in combat. I know like all the Black Dragons are like fairly mediocre. They have a 4-up save, and the Drake Spawn Knights. But in this list, I'm guessing they're mainly chaff. They're meant to be distractions and chaff. For the killer of this list. Yes.
They're surprisingly punchy when you cast Aura of Glory. They're surprisingly punchy.
Well, yeah, sure. So in this list, I'm saying they're normally 3s and 4s is not where you want to be, but sure. I mean, in this list, they're basically Battle Line and Chaff for the 20 Iron Drakes. He's running the typical combo with Emerald Iceborne to bring them back, Soulscream Bridge to get them where they need to go, because you don't really want to move with 20 Iron Drakes because you don't want to lose out on the extra shot, and they only have, I want to say, 18 to 24 inches depending on what weapon they're firing.
Yep, very short range unit.
Mm-hmm. Sorceress on Black Dragon has the Strike of Eagles spell, which is pick one enemy unit within 30 and roll 6 dice for each 4 of that unit suffers a mortal wound. So nice little bit of just an extra bit of mortal wounds there. Honestly, in this instance, maybe I would take Aura of Glory, which adds 1 to the attack melee weapon attack characteristic. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. Oh, nice. Oh, great. then we're good to go. But I really like the Tempest Eye pick because until the end of the first battle round, you get +3 to your move characteristic, so everything just is really fast in the first battle round. And in addition, you add 1 to your save rolls for all attacks that target Tempest Eye units. So it's like having a Finest Hour on all of your important heroes.
Yep. And it stacks with Finest Hour, and it stacks with all of defense.
Yep. So Krondys is on a 2-up save for the first battle round, which I love, which
Yep.
is an amazing tool against Alpha Strikes, especially
Oh, yeah.
when you spend a command point for all out defense.
Yeah, so
Um,
Krondys casting Aura of Glory is brilliant. It's one of the things I was going to feature in our upcoming video about using Stormcast and other armies. That's one of the best uses for Krondys that I've seen, is using him as a wizard in cities, not just in Hallowed, but in Tempest in particular, because +3 to cast is insanely good. That's normally, like, you have to bring a whole bunch of pieces. You have to have like the right battle mage. You have to have a celestial hurricanum. You have to bring all these things, and Krondys just does it. +3 to cast that spell. And that's just an aura around him, gives everything +1 to melee attacks, which is really good with your Drakespawn Knights. It's really good with your Krondys, your Black Dragons, because these things all have multiple attack profiles. And then when you combine that with the Black Dragon Dreadlord fighting first and running and charging, with a +3 move on the first turn and a flaming weapon, like, you're just doing so much upfront damage, right? And then it still has the Iron Drake combo, right? So you bring a bridge, you summon the bridge, and then you just teleport your drakes across it. They don't count as moving, then they unload a whole bunch of damage. This is
what I really love is
I like this list a lot.
And it's really trying to capitalize on the Tempest Eye ability too. The command ability is the ability to run and shoot. So the general in this instance has +3 to their move. They can run. They can use their feated breath. They can charge and fight first. It's a pretty potent combo. And then I guess Strike of Eagles just keep doing mortal wounds from range, and Krondys to basically debuff opponents and put Aura of Glory for a +1 attack, which is I love this. This is
Yep, I think it's
not the usual Hallowed Heart. I want to say Hallowed Heart 20 Iron Drake combo, but man, this thing is potent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only thing I like the triple monster here for battle tactic purposes, right? Sorceress on Black Dragon's also another wizard, so Krondys is going to be casting Aura and then Bridge, and then Sorceress is going to cast Emerald Life Swarm, usually, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, the only change I would possibly make to this is to run a Hurricanum instead of the Sorceress. I'd have to check how the points stack up on that, but it seems like the Sorceress on Black Dragon is the weakest thing in this list.
The weakest link.
Yeah. I like everything else here very much. Maybe the 20 Ardrakes could be 30, just to really make sure you can do the bridge combo reliably and then kill something in that turn. They can go up to 30, right? They're battle line. No, they're not. They're not with this. You have to have a specific general.
I think they're only battle line in Dispossessed or I want to say Greywater Fastness.
Yeah, you can't do it.
You need the dwarf general. Yeah,
they're not general.
You can't just.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Sorceress on Black Dragon is I would say that's the iffy one, especially since it's a one-cast wizard. I would much rather run the Celestial Hurricanum for that +1 to hit Aura.
Or the Luminarch would be a good pick too.
Luminarch, yeah. Just to do mortal wounds, yeah.
Mm-hmm. This is a great list, though.
Does the Celestial Hurricanum have a great shooting attack?
It does, yeah, it's good too.
Yeah, because it does like 18 and you roll 3 dice and it's 2 up is D3 mortal wounds. Yeah, I think I'd rather run that.
Now, the Sorceress is a Black Dragon monster, so you get tactics, you get all kinds of stuff. So there is value in it. It's not like this is a bad pick and you should pick something else. It's just I think I'd go a different direction with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, you might have to. The points might not work out. You might have to switch out 1 unit of Drakespawn Knights for maybe like I don't know, like what are they called? The Dark Elf Spearmen. I can never remember their names.
Dreadblades? No. Dreadspears?
Dreadspears, yes. Might have to do that, but other than that, no, this list is solid.
Yep. All right, and I'm going to take a stab at pronouncing your name here. Here you guys. Get ready? Drum roll.
Mm-hmm.
Örtensjö. I think I got it right. If I got it right, I win. Forever. This is a great list. I really like this, and it's getting me excited about talking about Cities of Sigmar and other armies that use Stormcast units. This is great. And let's talk about the greatest hunt by Ramaanica with Gryph hounds. Just had to show me up in my own video. So the greatest hunt is it's 5 Judicators and Karazai, and then minimum Liberators. Didn't even bother filling in like enhancements or strategies or anything like that. Just like, here's the list. It's 5 Judicators and Karazai. All right, I'm just gonna ask the question: is this a meme list? Like, is there something?
Probably
real?
is.
Yeah, like
it's a meme to hell. It's basically like Are you gonna focus on my Karazai or my Night Judicators? Because one of them's gonna kill you.
Yeah, while you're killing Karazai, you're getting shot down the whole time. I can't believe
Basically, yeah.
the points don't look right. Every time I look at this, I'm like, oh, there's like 1,000 points adjudicators, and then there's Karazai, and wait, there's still more? How would you guys fill this out in terms of like enhancements and things like that?
Probably Call for Aid. Either Call for Aid or I can't believe I'm saying this. Final Thunderstrike.
Yeah.
What about a steadfast march on Karazai?
Does he need it?
That I could see, sure. Well, how much does he move? Like 12?
Yep.
Does Karazai move 12?
14.
Yeah, okay, so
14.
Oh, 14. I don't know. I've never actually had a problem. Anything that has 14-inch movement typically gets into combat when I want it to be.
How about the Storm Host? There's no reason to pick Hammers of Sigmar here. You could go Tempest Lords and run some Prosecutors as your battle line instead. Or Celestial Vindicators to give Karazai the exploding 6s.
Celestial Vindicators would be nice for the exploding sixes. Tempest Lords would make it easier for Karazai to get into range with his opponent on the charge. So.
Yeah, I kind of like the Tempest Lords a bit more, because if you fail a charge with Karazai, you're going to have a really bad time with this list. And Prosecutors can absorb only Shell, which is good, because you do not want Karazai taking any damage on the way in.
Yep.
In terms of enhancements, pretty much what the Great Hunt had, I guess. I can't really think of anything else. Like Mirror Shield, Luckstone, Arcane Tome.
Yeah, I would say Mirror Shield on one, Arcane Tome with Lightning Blast, same as your Great Hunt, just more sources of mortal wounds.
Yeah, what grand strategy would you run? This is such a
Hold
pickle.
the line, probably.
And you just never deploy one of your Liberators. You just keep it in a corner.
If we want to
keep
push
it in a corner
list,
or keep it in the sky, like keep it in the sky till turn 3 and hope it survives 2 turns in the corner.
If you want to push the meme list, give it Vendetta for the grand strategy.
Oh, kill the enemy general and keep yours alive?
Yeah.
Oh boy. I don't even know what the general is in this list. Probably the Judicator, right?
Probably the Judicator. Like make it the Mirror Shield Judicator.
Sure, yeah, harder to take down that way. Cool. Just I feel attacked by this list.
It's yeah, I think it's definitely more memey than yours. I think yours is like, hey, how do I tackle threats? This one's just like, oh, I have models.
Big Dragon. Big Dragon.
Big Dragon. Big Dragon, yeah.
That's probably why they made it to the top 4.
Do we know anyone who's actually bought 5 Night Judicators? I myself have 3. So I don't have 5.
I have 1, and I'm just taking Vigilors and I'm putting them on 90mm bases.
Okay, that's fair.
Because there's a couple of them that have this really cool pose. They look like the Night Judicator. They got a very heroic looking thing going on. They look really tiny on a 90mm base, but I'm not buying 5 of the exact same hero model for a list.
No, that seems excessive. Unless they go on like sale at my local shop or something, because no one's buying them.
All right, that wraps it up for Lords of the Storm number 3, Big Dragon. Don't know how we're gonna do the next one. Maybe like every list has to have a Knight Relictor or something along those lines. Something stupid. I'm sure we can think of something stupid. Upcoming episodes. We are working now. Sorry?
No Relictor.
No Relictor. Oh, yeah. Okay, I like that. No Relictor at all. That's probably it. Yeah, we'll probably do another one in February, and that'll be the gimmick. So right now we're working on the Stormcast units as allies and coalition. I am looking forward to that video here. The Tempest Die list here is just like a little taste of that, because Stormcast do really gross things in a Cities of Sigmar army, and I'm really looking forward to talking about that. We are also, I've confirmed a guest to talk about the Fireslayers Battletome review. I don't want to say who it is yet, but I'm really excited to have him on the show. And we're definitely going to be doing a review of Fireslayers, and we are looking right now maybe have someone for the Deepkin Battletome review as well. Right now we're looking at maybe thinking of new names for like a sub podcast. Maybe like instead of the Stormkeep, it would be the Magma Hold or something equally cheesy. We'll figure that out.
Forge.
The what?
The Forge.
The Forge. Ooh. Okay. It's an interesting one. We're also working on How to Counter Everything #2, Iron Jaws. Specifically Iron Jaws, not the other Aurochs. We're going to be talking about cabbages, how to avoid getting stomped by them, how to take them down, what to do about pig spam, what to do about Kragnos with a bunch of cabbages and pig spam, what to do about brute spam. All kinds of things are going to be covered in that video. So look forward to that one. And James, take us through Hobby Hangouts.
Yep, so usual 3 hobby hangouts a week. Wednesday evenings for the crowd in North America, Saturday afternoons for the European crowd, and Sunday afternoons for the Australian crowd. Come hang out, just have a good time. Listen to my air compressor drone on in the background these days, but yeah, all around we just have a good time and hang out.
Yeah, you can mute yourself when you run the air compressor, right?
I actually don't think that my air compressor picks up on the mic, or my mic doesn't pick up the air compressor unless I talk. So,
or everyone's being really polite and hasn't said anything yet.
There you go.
Working on battle reports, we're painting terrain, and we're getting a list together. Like we've discussed in the past, we don't want battle reports to just be here's 2 random lists and let's put them together. We actually want there to be like a discussion on the tactics of it. We want it to be as an extension of this podcast and show concepts in real time. That's what we're hoping for. So if you want to support us in getting some expensive audio and podcasting equipment and our general takeover of the world as we accumulate more value, consider supporting us on Patreon. We're on patreon.com/Stormkeep. You can get early access to podcast episodes. You can vote on which episodes are coming up next. We're going to have tournament reports from the podcast hosts. I know Morganki just went to a recent RTT with your Annihiliana Grande, so that will be pretty cool to read about. And we also offer a private one-on-one list workshop. Like if you have a big GT coming up, like Adepticon or LVO or another open at Warhammer World, you can get private tutoring and gameplay tips from us. So want to give a shout out to our supporters here. Big shout out to Champasaur, Sleepa, Marcus Pfeffercorn, Ryan Jones, Nick Riley, Pavel Raman, Marcus, LT, Spartan 12706, Red Rum Mage, Length, Take, Colic, Grogs, Hotbur, Bulko, What Are Frogs, Rending, Combat, Tim Anderson, Nick Barber, Dignica, Jack Geiger, K. Betson, who may or may not be on a Gryph Charger, Stan Wise, Reaper Time, who may or may not have a long-strike crossbow, Mark Knight, Blood Clot Plots, James Nussbaum, Modnar, Echo Papa, Party Raptor, and Cure Dynamic. Thank you all very much for your support. It has been really, really gratifying that we've gotten any support, frankly. I can't believe that people like our show. I'm amazed by it every single day.
Forget Nico.
Oh, Nico. Oh, God, yeah, you got in. You signed up just after I finished the slide. Sorry, buddy. Yeah, Nico, shout out to that guy. He recently boosted our Discord server, too. So big shout out to Nico. And that wraps it up for this episode. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you in the next one.
See you guys.